Hello, it's me, Salty. Welcome to Mustrim. Tonight we're going to be reading. Funny that. Funny that I'm doing the thing that I said I would be doing every Tuesday and Wednesday. Hello everyone. Hello viewers. Hello Vote Watchers. What? Yes, I'm going to be reading. What? Pardon? Who's talking? So, tonight, we're going to be continuing on to chapter 7. Yes. Oh, also, hello Kitty, how you doing? I'm enthusiastic Kitty about your elf ear jewellery adventure. So definitely let me know how that goes. So yeah, I don't think I've got anything else since yesterday. Haven't been doing anything really. Dad's a lot better today, which is good. So we had a big raid yesterday. That was fun. I didn't know what to do. I was just like, oh, it's like 100 people. Alright, so yesterday was chapter 6, and in chapter 6, during the large raid, I don't know why. Why? Maybe it's just that time. Because I mean, it is pretty. Well, it's pretty early in Canada or in the US. And I suppose it's around lunchtime in the UK. I don't know. Yes, so chapter 6, K-Day. No, Kitty, no you. I like Kitty's streams. Very comfy. Yes, that's right. It was from K-Day's point of view. Still not sure about the pronunciation, but we're going with what I've been saying. Yes. K-Day, while Takeo was away talking to the pirates, she went and back to her home at Shirakawa, and she went to visit her sisters, who weren't there. Lord Fujiwara had taken them. So she went to Lord Fujiwara, and Lord Fujiwara had all her men killed and took her prisoner, and basically said that your sisters have been sent to Lord Arai, and Lord Arai is very angry that you married Takeo instead of me, that we were basically betrothed anyway, and your marriage has been annulled, apparently, and you're going to basically be one of my treasures and stay in seclusion for the rest of your life. And that was bloody awful. So yeah, but K-Day resolved not. Like you should have put a ring on it. Yeah, well, he was going to, but that was the thing. She ran off to as soon as she heard that Takeo was alive and in at the temple at Teriyama. She basically ran off to meet him, which is fine. But the thing was, she wasn't betrothed to Fujiwara at all, even though he was like heavily not flirting. What's the word? Pursuing? There's another word, I can't remember what it is. He was heavily pursuing her, but she wasn't interested. She didn't trust him. Going to is not doing. Exactly, yeah. But, yeah. So maybe he should have said, we should have, that would have sucked, because I'm rooting for Kader to finally get a bit of agency around. And by agency, I mean the literary agency, the ability to do things. So yes, I'm getting a bit like she's been basically had attempted sexual assault against her 3 times, and now she's been taken prisoner by a guy who's not interested in her as a wife, just as a trophy, literally, in the literal sense. Yeah, that's exactly right, Kitty. That's what his point of view is. Like, he's clearly not attracted to her at all. It's just he sees her as a treasure, and he has a very cruel streak to him. So we will see. We will see. Alrighty. So, chapter 7 of Brilliance of the Moon. We're back to Takeo's point of view. I feared I would have to report your disappearance to your wife, Makoto said as we made our way through the darkness to the shrine. He's still up north. He's on the mainland again, just south of the pirates' base. I dreaded it more than any battle I have ever faced. I was afraid you would have deserted me, I replied. I hope you know me better than that. It would have been my duty to tell Lady Otori, but I was going to leave Jiro here with the horses and food, and return as soon as I had spoken to her. He added in a low voice, I would never desert you, Takeo. You must know that. I felt ashamed of my doubts, and did not share them with him. He called to the men who were keeping guard, and they shouted in reply. What's wrong? Aziz, light. Thank you, Aziz, much better. He called to the men who were keeping guard, and they shouted in reply. Are you all awake? I said, for usually we shared the night watch and slept in turns. None of us felt like sleep, he replied. The night is too still and heavy. The recent storm, the one that delayed you, came up out of nowhere. And for the last couple of days, we've had the feeling that there is someone spying on us. Yesterday, Jiro went to look for wild yams in the forest and saw someone lurking in the trees. I thought the bandits the fishermen mentioned might have got word of our presence, and were checking out our strength. We'd been making more noise than a team of oxen as we stumbled along the overgrown path. If anyone was spying on us, they would have no doubt of my return. They're probably afraid we're competition, I said. As soon as we get back with more men, we'll get rid of them, but the 6 of us can't take them on now. We'll leave at first light and hope they don't ambush us on the road. It was impossible to tell what hour it was, or how long it would be till dawn. The old shrine buildings were full of strange noises, creaks from the timber, rustling in the thatch. Car. Okay. Owls called all night from the woods, and once I heard a pad of feet. A wild dog, perhaps, or maybe even a wolf. I tried to sleep, but my mind was full of all those who wanted to kill me. It was quite possible that we had been traced here, and the delay made it even more likely. The fisherman, Ryoma even, might have let slip something about my trip to Oshima, and I knew only too well that the tribe's spies were everywhere. Quite apart from the edict they had issued against me, many of them would now feel bound by blood feuds to avenge their relatives. Though by day I might believe in the truth of prophecy, as always, in the early hours of the morning, I found it less comforting. I was inching towards achieving my goal. I could not bear the thought of dying before I'd succeeded. But with so many arrayed against me, was I as much of a lunatic as Joanne to believe I could overcome them? I must have dozed off, for when I next opened my eyes, the sky was light grey and birds were starting to sing. Jiro was still asleep next to me, breathing deeply and evenly like a child. I touched his shoulder to wake him, and he opened his eyes, smiling. Then, as he returned from the other world, I saw disappointment and grief spring into his face. "Were you dreaming?" I said. "Yes, I saw my brother. I was so glad he was alive after all. He called to me to follow him, and then walked away into the forest behind our house." He made a visible effort to master his emotions, and got to his feet. "We're leaving right away, aren't we? I'll go and get the horses ready." I thought of the dream I had had about my mother, and wondered what the dead were trying to tell us. In the dawn light, the shrine looked more ghostly than ever. It was a bitter, hostile place, and I could not wait to leave it. The horses were fresh after the days of rest, and we rode fast. It was still hot and oppressive, with grey clouds and no wind. I looked back at the beach as we went up the cliff path, wondering about the fisherman and his remaining child, but there was no sign of life from the hovels. We were all jumpy. My ears were alert to every sound, straining to hear above the pounding of the horses' feet and the creak and jingle of the harness, as well as the dull roaring of the sea. At the top of the cliff, I halted for a moment and gazed out towards Oshima. It was hidden in the mist, but a heavy crown of clouds showed where it lay. Jiro had stopped alongside me, the others riding on into the forest ahead. There was a moment for silence, and in that moment I heard the unmistakable sound, somewhere between a creak and a sigh, of a bowstring being drawn. I shouted out a warning to Jiro and tried to reach him to push him down, but Shun leapt sideways, almost unseating me, and I found myself clinging to his neck. Jiro turned his head and looked towards the forest. The arrow passed whistling above me and struck him in the eye. He let out a cry of shock and pain. His hands went to his face, and then he fell forwards onto his horse's neck. The horse neighed in alarm, bucked a little, and tried to take off after its companions in front, its rider swinging helplessly from side to side. Shun stretched out his neck and went snaking across the ground towards the shelter of the trees. Ahead, Makoto and the guards had turned, One of the men rode forwards and managed to grab the panicked horse by the bridle. Makoto lifted Jiro from the saddle, but by the time I reached them, the boy had died. The arrow had penetrated right through his head, shattering the back of the skull. Poor Jiro. I liked him. I dismounted, cut off the bolt, and drew out the shaft. The arrow was massive and fletched with eagle feathers. The bow that had sent it must have been huge, the sort that solitary bowmen use. I was filled with an almost unbearable anguish. The shot had been meant for me. If I had not heard it and evaded it, Jiro would not be dead. Mad rage erupted in me. I would kill his murderer or die myself. Makoto said in a whisper, "It must be an ambush. Let's take shelter and see how many there are." "No, this was meant for me," I replied as quietly. "Hello, Kid Monster. How you doing? Welcome in. We're just getting started." "No, this was meant for me," I replied as quietly. "This is the work of the tribe. Stay here, take cover. I'm going after him. There will be only one or two at most." I did not want the men with me. Only I could move silently and invisibly. Only I had the skills to get close to this assassin. "Come when I call you. I want to take him alive." Makoto said, "If there's only one, rather than take cover, we'll ride on. Give me your helmet, I'll ride Shun. We may be able to confuse him. He'll follow us, and you can come on him from behind." Phrasing. I did not know how far this deception would work, or how close the bowman was. He would have seen the arrow miss me. He would guess I'd be after him. But if my men rode ahead, at least they would not be hindering me. The bowman might be anywhere in the forest by now, but I reckoned I could move faster and more silently than he could. As the horses trotted off with their sad burden, I went invisible and ran up the slope, threading my way between the trees. I did not think the bowman would have stayed in place from which he had sent the fatal arrow. I figured he would have moved in a southwest direction to cut us off where the road turned back to the south. But even if he was still watching us, unless he had supreme tribe skills, he would not know where I was now. Before long, I heard the sounds of a man breathing and the slight pressure of a foot on the soft earth. I stopped and held my own breath. He passed within 10 paces of me without seeing me. It was Kikuta Hajime, the young wrestler from Matsue with whom I had trained. I had last seen him at the wrestler's stable when I had left for Hagi with Akio. I had imagined then that he had thought he would never see me again. But Akio had not been able to kill me as he had planned, and now Hajime had been sent against me. The huge bow was slung over his shoulder. He moved like most heavy men, balanced on the outside of his feet, and, despite his weight, swiftly and silently. Only my ears could have discerned him. I followed him towards the road, where I could hear the horses ahead of us, moving at a swift canter, as if in flight. I even heard one of the guards shout to Makoto to ride faster, addressing him as Lord Otori, making me grin bitterly at the deception. My quarry and I went at speed up the slope and down again, and came out on a rocky outcrop that gave a good vantage point over the road beneath. Hajime planted his feet firmly on the rock and took the bow from his shoulder. He set the arrow in the cord. I heard him take a deep breath as he drew it back. The muscles stood out on his arms and rippled across his neck. In close combat with him, I wouldn't stand a chance. I could probably get him with Jato if I took him from behind, but I'd have to be sure to kill him with the first blow, and I wanted to take him alive. He stood motionless, waiting for his target to appear from under the trees. I could barely hear his breathing now. I knew the technique he was using, and I was familiar enough with the training he'd undergone to recognize his total concentration. He was one with the bow, with the arrow. It was probably a magnificent sight, but all I was aware of was my desire to see him suffer and then die. I tried to calm my rage. I had only a few moments to think. I still carried on me my tribe weapons, among them a set of throwing knives. I was no expert with them, but they might answer my purpose now. I had dried and oiled them after my soaking in the pirate's harbour. They slipped silkily from their holster. As the horses approached below, I ran, still invisible, out from my hiding place, throwing the knives as I went. The first two sailed past him, breaking his concentration and making him turn towards me. He was looking over my head with the same puzzled expression he'd worn in the training hall when I had used invisibility there. It made me want to laugh and pained me beyond words at once, or at one and the same time. The third knife caught him on the cheek, its many points making blood flower immediately. He took an involuntary step backwards, and I saw he was right on the brink. I threw the next two knives directly at his face, and came back to visibility right in front of him. Jato sprang into my hand. He threw himself backwards to avoid the blow, and went over the edge, falling heavily almost under the horse's feet. He was winded by the fall, and bleeding from cheek and eyes, but it still took the five of us more than a brief struggle to subdue him. He did not utter a sound, but his eyes burned with rage and malevolence. I had to decide whether to kill him on the spot, or drag him back to Mariama, where I would devise a slow death for him that might assuage my grief for Jiro. Once Hajime was trussed up and unable to move, I drew Makoto aside to ask his advice. I could not get out of my head the memory of how Hajime and I had trained together. We had almost been friends. Such was the code of the tribe, that it transcended any personal liking or loyalty. Didn't I already know that from my own experience, from Kenji's betrayal of Shigeru? Yet I was shocked by it all over again. Hajime called to me. "Hey, dog!" One of the guards kicked him. "How dare you address Lord Otori in that fashion?" "Come here, Lord Otori," the wrestler sneered. "I have something to tell you." I went to him. "The Kikuta have your son," he said, "and his mother is dead." "Yuki is dead. Once the boy was born, they made her take poison. Akio will raise him alone. The Kikuta will get you. You betrayed them. They will never let you live. And they have your son." He made an almost animal-like snarl, and, extending his tongue out to its fullest length, clamped his teeth down through it, biting it off. His eyes were wild with pain and rage, yet he did not make another sound. He spat out his tongue, and a gush of blood followed it. It filled his throat, choking him. His powerful body arched and struggled, fighting the death his will imposed on it as he drowned in his own blood. I turned away, sickened and saddened beyond belief. My rage had abated. In its place was a leaden heaviness, as if the sky had fallen into my soul. I ordered the men to drag him into the forest, cut off his head, and leave his body for the wolves and foxes. Jiro's body we took with us. We stopped at a small town along the coast, Ohama, where we held the burial service at the local shrine and paid for a stone lantern to be erected for him beneath the cedars. We donated the bow and arrows to the shrine, and I believe they still hang there, up under the rafters along with the votive pictures of horses, for the place was sacred to the horse goddess. Among the pictures are my horses. We had to stay in the town for nearly 2 weeks, first to conduct the funeral ceremonies and cleanse ourselves from the pollution of death, and then for the festival of the dead. I borrowed an inkstone and brushes from the priest and painted Shun's picture on a slab of wood. Into it, I believe, I put not only my respect and gratitude for the horse that had saved my life again, but also my grief for Jiro, for Yuki, for my life that seemed to lead me only into witnessing the deaths of others, and maybe my longing for Keide, whom I missed with physical pain as grief set alight my desire for her. I painted obsessively. Shun, Raku, Kyu, Aoi. The horses. It was a long time since I had painted, and the brush in my hand, the cool wash of the ink, had a calming effect on me. As I sat alone in the tranquil temple, I allowed myself to fantasize that this was my whole life. I had retired from the world and spent my days painting votive pictures for pilgrims. I recalled the words of the abbot at Teriyama on my first visit there so long ago with Shigeru. "Come back when this is all over. There will be a place for you here." "Will it ever be over?" I asked, as I had then. Often I found tears springing to my eyes. I grieved for Jiro and for Yuki, for their short lives, for their devotion to me, which I had not deserved, for their murders on my account. I longed to avenge them, but the brutality of Hajime's suicide had repelled me. What endless cycle of death and revenge had I initiated? I recalled all that Yuki and I had experienced together, and bitterly regretted. What? That I had not loved her? Maybe I had not loved her with the passion I felt for Keide, but I had desired her, and the memory of it made me ache with desire all over again, and weep again for her lithe body now stilled forever. I was glad the solemnities of the Festival of the Dead gave me the chance to say farewell to her spirit. I lit candles for all the dead who had gone before me, and asked them for their forgiveness and their guidance. It was a year since I had stood at the bank of the river at Yamagata with Shigeru, and we had sent our little flaming boats adrift on the current. A year since I had spoken Keide's name, seen her face come alight, and known that she loved me. It's so sad. Yeah. Desire tormented me. I could have lain with Makoto, and so eased it, as well as comforted him in his grief. But though I was often tempted, something held me back. Hello, Forest. Hope you're having a nice day. It's a sad part. Jiro died just before. Got killed by tribe assassin, the young boy. During the day, while I painted for hours, I meditated on the past year. And I had done During the day, while I painted for hours, I meditated on the past year and all I had done in it, my mistakes, and the pain and suffering they had inflicted on those around me. Apart from my decision to go with the tribe, all my mistakes, I came to realize, sprang from uncontrolled desire. If I had not slept with Makoto, his obsession would not have led him to expose Keide to her father. If I had not slept with her, she would not have nearly died when she lost our child. And if I had not slept with Yuki, she would still be alive, and the son that would kill me would never have been born. I found myself thinking of Shigeru, who had resisted marrying and puzzled his household by his abstinence, because he had vowed to Lady Maruyama that he would lie with no one but her. I knew of no other man who had made such a vow, but the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to emulate him in this, as in everything I did. Kneeling silently before the horse-headed cannon, that's capital K, cannon, I made a vow to the goddess that all my love, physical and emotional, from now on would be given only to Keide, to my wife. Our separation had made me realize anew how much I needed her, how she was the fixed point that steadied and strengthened my life. My love for her was the antidote to the poison that rage and grief had sent through me. Like all antidotes, I kept it well hidden and well guarded. Makoto, as grief-stricken as I, also spent long hours in silent meditation. We hardly spoke during the day, but after the evening meal, we often talked until far into the night. He, of course, had heard Hajime's words to me, and tried to ask me about Yuki, about my son, but at first I could not bear to speak of either of them. However, on the first night of the festival, after we returned from the shore, we drank a little wine together. Relieved that the coolness between us seemed to have vanished, and trusting him completely, as I trusted no other man, I felt I should tell him the words of the prophecy. He listened carefully as I described the ancient blind woman, her saintly appearance, the cave, the prayer wheel, and the sign of the hidden. I have heard of her, he said. Many people aspiring to holiness go to seek her, but I have never known anyone else who has found the way. I was taken by the outcast, Joanne. He was silent. It was a warm, still night, and all the screens stood open. A full moon poured its light over the shrine and the sacred grove. The sea roared on the shingle beach. A gecko crossed the ceiling, its tiny feet sucking at the beams. Mosquitoes whined and moths fluttered around the lamps. I extinguished the flames so they would not burn their wings. The moon was bright enough to light the room. Makoto said, finally, "Then I must accept that he is favoured by the enlightened one, as you are." "The saint told me, 'It is all one,'" I said. I did not understand at the time, but later at Terayama I remembered Shigeru's words just before his death, and the truth of what she said was revealed to me. "You cannot put it into words?" "No, but it is true, and I live my life by it. There are no distinctions between us. Our castes, as much as our beliefs, are illusions that come between us and truth. It is how heaven deals with all men, and how I must too. I followed you because of my love for you, and because I believe in the justice of your cause," he said, smiling. "I did not realize you were to be my spiritual advisor too." "I know nothing of spiritual matters," I said, suspecting he was laughing at me. "I have abandoned the beliefs of my childhood, and I cannot take on any others in their place. All religious teachings seem to me to be made up half of deep truth and half of utter madness. People cling to their beliefs as if they could be saved by them, but beyond all the teachings there is a place of truth, where it is all one." Makoto laughed. "You seem to have more insight in your ignorance than I after years of study and debate. What else did the saint say to you?" I repeated the words of the prophecy to him. "3 bloods are mixed in you. You were born into the hidden, but your life has been brought into the open and is no longer your own. Earth will deliver what heaven desires. Your lands will stretch from sea to sea. 5 battles will buy your peace, 4 to win and 1 to lose." I paused at that point, not certain whether to go on. "5 battles," Makoto said. "How many have we fought?" "2, if we count Jinnamon and the bandits." "So that was why you asked if that fight could be called a battle. Do you believe it all?" "Most of the time. Should I not?" "I would believe anything I heard from her if I had the good fortune to kneel at her feet," Makoto said quietly. "Was there anything more?" "Many must die," I quoted, "but you yourself are safe from death, except at the hands of your own son." "I am sorry," he said with compassion. "That is a terrible burden for any man to bear, especially you who have such a strong bond with children. I imagine you long to have your own sons." It touched me that he knew my character so well. When I thought Keide was lost to me forever, when I first went to the tribe, I slept with the girl who helped me bring Shigeru out of Inuyama. Her name was Yuki. It was she who took his head to the temple. "I remember her," Makoto said quietly. "Indeed, I'll never forget her arrival and the shock her news caused us." "She was Muto Kenji's daughter," I said, with renewed sorrow for Kenji's loss. I cannot believe the tribe used her so. They wanted to get a child, and once it was born, they killed her. I regret it bitterly, and I should not have done it, not only because of my son, but because it was the cause of her death too. If it is to be my son who kills me, it will only be what I deserve. All young people make mistakes, Makoto said. It is our fate to have to live with their consequences. He reached out and clasped my hand. I am glad you told me all this. It confirms many things I feel about you, that you have been chosen by heaven and are protected to a certain extent until your goals are achieved. I wish I were protected from sorrow, I said. Then you would indeed reach enlightenment, he replied dryly. The full moon brought a change in the weather. The heat lessened and the air cleared. There was even a hint of autumn in the coolness of the mornings. Once the festival was over, my spirits lifted a little. Other words of the abbot came to me, reminding me that my followers, all those who supported me, did so of their own free will. I had to set my grief aside and take up my cause again, so that their deaths would not be in vain. And the words Shigeru had spoken to me in a small village called Hinode, on the far side of the 3 countries, also returned to me. Only children weep, men and women endure. We made plans to move on the following day, but that afternoon there was a slight earth tremor, just enough to set the wind chimes ringing and make the dogs howl. In the evening there was another, stronger one. So we know what time it is now, from the last chapter, when the earthquakes, when Kade was experiencing the earthquakes. A lamp was knocked over in the house up the street from where we were lodging, and we spent most of the night helping the townspeople contain the ensuing fire. As a result, we were delayed another few days. By the time we left, I was mad with impatience to be with Kade again. Kitty, no worries. Have good stretch. It made me hurry towards Mariyama, rising early and pushing the horses till late at night under the waning moon. We were silent mostly. Jiro's presence was too sharply missed to allow the light-hearted banter with which we had ridden out, and I had a vague sense of apprehension that I could not rid myself of. It was well into the hour of the dog when we reached town. Most of the houses were already darkened, and the castle gates were barred. The guards greeted us warmly, but they could not dispel my unease. I told myself that it was just that I was tired and irritable after the tedious journey. I wanted a hot bath, something decent to eat, and to sleep with my wife. However, her woman, Minami, met me at the entrance to the residence, and as soon as I saw her face, I knew something was wrong. I asked her to tell Kade that I had returned, and she fell to her knees. "Sir, Lord Otori," she stammered. "She has gone to Shirakawa to bring her sisters here." What? I could not believe what I was hearing. Kade had gone off on her own, without telling me or asking me? How long ago? When is she expected back? She left shortly after the festival. Minami looked as if she would burst into tears. I don't want to alarm your lordship, but I expected her before now. Why did you not go with her? She would not allow it. She wanted to ride, to go quickly, so she would be back before your return. Light the lamps and send someone to fetch Lord Sugita, I said. But it seemed he had already heard of my return and was on his way. I walked into the residence. I thought I could still smell Kade's fragrance on the air. The beautiful rooms, with their hangings and painted screens, were all as she had designed them. The memory of her presence was everywhere. Minami had told the maids to bring lamps, and their shadowy forms moved silently through the rooms. One of them approached me and whispered that the bath was ready for me, but I told her I would speak with Sugita first. I went into Kade's favourite room, and my gaze fell on the writing table, where she knelt so often to copy the records of the tribe. The wooden box that held them always stood alongside the table. It was not there. I was wondering if she had hidden it or taken it with her when the maid announced Sugita's arrival. I entrusted my wife to you, I said. I was beyond rage, just cold to the depths of my being. Why did you allow her to leave? He looked surprised at the question. Forgive me, he said. Lady Otori insisted on going. She took plenty of men with her, led by Amano Tenzo. My nephew Hiroshi went too. It was a pleasure trip to see her family home and bring her sisters here. Then why has she not returned? It seemed harmless enough. Maybe I was overreacting? I am sure she will be back tomorrow, Sugita said. Lady Naomi made many such journeys. The domain is used to their mistress travelling in this fashion. The maid brought tea and food, and we talked briefly of my journey while I ate. I had not told Sugita exactly what I'd had in mind in case it all came to nothing, and I did not go into details now, but merely said that I was working out a long-term strategy. There was no word from the Miyoshi brothers, and no reports on what either Arai or the Otori were up to. I felt as if I were wandering in half-darkness. I wanted to talk to Kade, and I hated this lack of information. If only I had a network of spies working for me. I found myself wondering, as I had before, if it would be possible to find talented children, tribe orphans if such children existed, and bring them up for my own purposes. I thought of my son with a strange longing. Would he have a combination of Yuki's talents and mine? If he did, they would be used against me. Sugita said, I hear young Jiro died. Yes, sadly. He was struck by an arrow that was intended for me. What a blessing your lordship escaped, he exclaimed. What happened to the assassin? He died. It will not be the last attempt. It is the work of the tribe. I wondered how much Sugita knew about my tribe of blood, what rumours had been circulating about me during my absence. By the way, my wife was copying something for me. What happened to the box and the scrolls? She never let them out of her sight, he replied. If they are not here, she must have taken them with her. I did not want to show my concern, so I said no more. Sugita left me, and I took a bath, calling to one of the maids to come and scrub my back, wishing Kaede would suddenly appear, as she had at Niwa's house, and then remembering, almost unbearably, Yuki. When the maid had left me, I soaked in the hot water, thinking about what I was going to tell Kaede, for I knew I must share the prophecy about my son with her. Yet I could not imagine how I would frame the words. Manami had spread out the beds and was waiting to extinguish the lamps. I asked her about the records box, and she gave me the same answer as Sugita. Sleep was a long time coming. I heard the first roosters crow, and then fell into a heavy slumber just as day was breaking. When I woke, the sun was well up, and I could hear the sounds of the household all around me. Manami had just come in with breakfast, and was fussing over me and telling me to rest after such a long and tiring journey, when I heard Makoto's voice outside. I told Manami to bring him in, but he called to me from the garden, not bothering to undo his sandals. "Come at once. The boy, Hiroshi, has returned." I stood so quickly that I knocked the tray and sent it flying. Manami exclaimed in shock and started to pick the things up. Roughly, I told her to leave them and bring my clothes. When I was dressed, I joined Makoto outside. "Where is he?" "At his uncle's house. He's not in very good shape." Makoto gripped my shoulder. "I'm sorry. The news he brings is terrible." My immediate thought was of the earthquake. I saw again the flames that we had fought to extinguish, and imagined Kaede caught in them, trapped in her burning house. I stared at Makoto, saw the pain in his eyes, and tried to form the unspeakable words. "She is not dead," he said quickly, "but Amano and all the men, it seems, were slaughtered. Only Hiroshi escaped." Ah, that's right, because Hiroshi's horse was pretty green and panicked and just bolted and took him with him. I could not imagine what had happened. No one would dare harm Kaede in either Maruyama or Shirakawa lands. Had the tribe kidnapped her to strike at me? "It was Lord Fujiwara," Makoto said. "She is in his house." We ran across the main bailey, through the castle gates, down the slope, and over the bridge into the town. Sugita's house lay immediately opposite. A small crowd had gathered outside, staring silently. We pushed through them and entered the garden. 2 grooms were endeavouring to persuade an exhausted horse to get to its feet. It was a pretty roan colour, its flanks darkened by sweat, its eyes rolled in its head, and froth came from its mouth. I did not think it would ever get up again. "The boy rode day and night to get here," Makoto said, but I hardly heard him. Even more than usual, I was acutely aware of every detail around me. The shine of the wooden floors from within the house, the fragrance of the flowers placed in the alcoves, birdsong in the garden shrubs. Inside my head a dull voice was repeating, "Fujiwara?" Sugita came out at our approach, his face ashen. There was nothing he could say to me. He looked like a man who had already decided to end his life. a shell of what he'd been the night before. "Lord Otori," he said, faltering. "Is the boy hurt? Can he talk? You had better come and speak to him." Hiroshi lay in a room at the back of the house. It gave on to a small green garden. I could hear a stream flowing through it. It was cooler here than in the main rooms, and the bright morning glare was tempered by shady trees. 2 women knelt beside the boy, one wiping his face and limbs with a damp cloth. The other held a tea bowl, from which she was trying to persuade him to drink. They both stopped what they were doing and bowed to the ground when we came in. Hiroshi turned his head, saw me, and tried to sit. "Lord Otori," he whispered, and despite himself, his eyes filled with tears. Struggling to control them, he said, I'm sorry, forgive me." I pitied him. He was trying so hard to be a warrior, trying so hard to live by the warrior's strict code. I knelt beside him and gently laid my hand on his hair. He still wore it dressed like a child's. He was years away from his coming-of-age day, yet he tried to act like a man. "Tell me what happened." His eyes were fixed on my face, but I did not return his gaze. He spoke in a quiet, steady voice, as though he had been rehearsing his account over and over on the long ride home. "When we came to Lady Otori's house, the retainer, Lord Shoji, don't trust him, he betrayed us, told the lady that her sisters were visiting Lord Fujiwara. She sent him to bring them back, but he returned saying they were no longer there, but the Lord would tell Lady Shirakawa. He would only call her that, where they were if she visited him. We went the next day. A man called Marita came to meet us. As soon as Lady Otori rode through the gate, she was seized. Amano, who was at her side, was killed at once. I didn't see any more." His voice tailed off, and he took a deep breath. "My horse bolted. I could not control him. I should have taken a quieter horse, but I liked this one because he was so beautiful. Amano rebuked me for it. He said he was too strong for me. I wouldn't listen. I couldn't defend her." Tears began to pour down his cheeks. One of the women leaned over and wiped them away. Makoto said gently, "We must be grateful to your horse. He certainly saved your life, and if you hadn't escaped, we would never have known what had happened." I tried to think of something to say to comfort Hiroshi, but there was no comfort. "Lord Otori," he said, trying to get up, "I'll show you the way. We can go and get her back." The effort was too much for him. I could see his eyes begin to glaze over. I took him by the shoulders and made him lie down. Sweat was mingling with the tears now, and he was trembling all over. "He needs to rest, but he becomes agitated and tries to get up," Sugita said. "Look at me, Hiroshi." I leaned over him and let my eyes meet his. Sleep came to him at once. His body relaxed and his breathing evened. The women could not help gasping, and I caught the look that flashed between them. They seemed to shrink away from me, averting their heads and taking great care not to brush against my clothes. "He'll sleep for a long time," I said. "It's what he needs. Tell me when he wakes up." I got to my feet. Makoto and Sugita also rose, looking at me expectantly. Inwardly, I was reeling with outrage, but the numbing calm of shock had descended on me. "Come with me," I said to Sugita. I really wanted to speak with Makoto alone, but I did not want to risk leaving Sugita. I was afraid he would slit his own belly, and I could not afford to lose him. The Maruyama clan's first loyalty was to Kaede, not to myself. I did not know how they would react to this news. I trusted Sugita more than the rest of them, and felt that if he stayed loyal, so would they. We walked back across the bridge and up the hill to the castle. The crowd outside had increased, and armed men were appearing in the streets. There was an atmosphere of unrest. Not really panic or even alarm, just a host of unruly people milling, exchanging rumours, readying themselves for some unexpected action. I had to make decisions quickly before the situation caught fire and burned out of control. Once we were inside the gates, I said to Makoto, "Prepare the men. We'll take half our warriors and ride at once against Fujiwara. Sugita, you must stay here and hold the town. We'll leave 2,000 men with you. Stock the castle against siege. I'll leave tomorrow at first light." Makoto's face was drawn and his voice anxious. "Don't do anything hasty. We have no idea where Arai is. You could be simply riding into a trap. To attack Lord Fujiwara, a man of his rank and status, will only turn opinion against you. It may be best not to react immediately." I cut him off. "It's impossible for me to wait. I will do nothing except bring her back. Start at once." We spent the next day in frantic preparation. I knew I was right to act immediately. The first reaction of the Maruyama people was fury and outrage. I wanted to take advantage of that. If I delayed, I would seem half-hearted, seeming to accept others' opinion of my legitimacy. I was all too aware of the risks I was taking, and knew I was following one act of rashness with another. But I could not conceive any other way of acting. At the end of the afternoon, I told Sugita to summon the elders. Within the hour, they were all assembled. I informed them of my intentions, warned them of the consequences, and told them I expected their complete loyalty to myself and my wife. None of them made any objections. I think my anger was too strong for that. But I was uneasy about them. They were of the same generation as Fujiwara and Arai, and were formed by the same code. I trusted Sugita, but with Kaede gone,
Take a fucking sip, babes.
could he keep them loyal while I was absent? Thank you, Sunny Day Enjoy. Happy Wednesday, yeah. It's Wednesday today, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Yeah. Could he keep them loyal while I was absent? Then I called for Shun and went out for a ride on him to clear my head, stretch his legs before taking him on another hard journey, and look at the state of the land. About half the rice harvest was in, the farmers working day and night to get the rice cut before the weather changed. Those I spoke to were anxious, forecasting an imminent typhoon, citing the halo round the last full moon, the migrating geese, their own aching bones. I organised Sugita's warriors to lend a hand in strengthening the dikes and banks against floods. No doubt they would complain, but I hoped the sense of crisis would override their pride. Finally, I found myself, only half intentionally, on the edge of the hamlet where the outcasts had settled. The usual smell of tanning hides and fresh blood hung over it. Some men, Joanne among them, were skinning a dead horse. I recognized the bright rowan colour. It was Hiroshi's, the one I'd seen dying that morning. I called to Joanne and dismounted, giving the reins to one of the grooms, who'd ridden out with me. I went and stood by the river bank, and Joanne came and crouched by the water, washing the blood from his hands and arms. "You've heard the news?" He nodded, glanced at me, and said, "What will you do?" What should I do? I wanted some word from some god. I wanted to hear another prophecy, one that included Keide, that bound our futures together. I would follow it blindly. "There are 3 more battles," Joanne said. "1 to lose and 2 to win. Then you will rule in peace from sea to sea." "With my wife?" He looked away across the water. 2 white egrets were fishing near the weir. There was a flash of orange and blue as a kingfisher swooped from a willow. "If you are to lose one battle, you should lose it now," he said. "If I lose my wife, none of it matters to me," I said. "I would kill myself." "That is forbidden to us," he replied quickly. "God has his plan for your life. All you have to do is follow it." When I did not reply, he went on. "It matters to us, who have left everything for you. It matters to those in the Otori lands who suffer now. We can bear war if peace comes from it. Don't abandon us." Standing by the peaceful river in the evening light, I thought that if I did not get her back, my heart would break utterly. A grey heron came flying slowly over the surface of the water, just above its own reflection. It folded its huge wings and landed with the slightest of splashes. It turned its head towards us, watching us. Then, satisfied that we posed no danger to it, began to stalk silently through the shallows. My real goal was to avenge Shigeru's death completely and take up my inheritance. Then the prophecy would be fulfilled. But it was impossible for me to let anyone take Keide from me without resistance. I could do nothing but go after her, even if it meant throwing away everything I had struggled for. I bade farewell to Joanne and rode back to the castle. Word had come that Hiroshi was awake and improving in health. I asked for him to be brought to me shortly. While I was waiting, I searched the residence for the box of records, but found no trace of it. It was yet another source of concern. I feared it might have been stolen, which would mean the tribe had penetrated the castle once, and could do so again. Hiroshi came to me just before nightfall. He was pale, with dark hollows under his eyes, but otherwise he had made a swift recovery. Physically and mentally, he was as tough as a full-grown man. I questioned him about every detail of the journey, and made him describe the terrain around Shirakawa and Fujiwara's residence. He told me how Raku had been killed, and the news saddened me deeply. The grey-black maned horse was the first I had mastered, a link with Shigeru and my brief life as his son in Hagi. Raku had been my gift to Keide when I had nothing else to give her, and he had brought her to Terayama. I'd sent everyone else away so I could speak in private to Hiroshi, and now I told him to move closer. Promise me you will tell no one of what we speak of next. I swear it, he said, adding impulsively, Lord Otori, I already owe you my life. I'll do anything to help rescue Lady Otori. We will rescue her, I said. I leave tomorrow. Take me with you, he begged. I was tempted to, but I did not think he was well enough. No, you are to stay here. He looked as if he would protest, but thought better of it and bit his lip. The records my wife was copying, did she take them with her? He whispered, We took both the originals and the copies. We hid them at Shirakawa in the sacred caves. I blessed Keide in my heart for her wisdom and foresight. Does anyone else know this? He shook his head. And you could find them again? Of course. You must never tell anyone where they are. Someday we will make a trip together to retrieve them. Then we can punish Shoji, he said gleefully. After a moment he added, Lord Otori, may I ask you something? Certainly. The day my father died, the men who killed the guards made themselves unseen in some way. Can you do that? Why do you ask? Do you think I can? The women in the room today were saying that you were a sorcerer. Forgive me, but you can do many strange things, like making me sleep. He looked at me, frowning. It was no ordinary sleep. I saw vivid dreams and understood things I'd never known before. If you can make yourself invisible, will you teach me how? Some things cannot be taught, I said. They are talents that are born in you. You already have many skills, and you have had the best of upbringings. Something I said made his eyes suddenly fill with tears. They told me Jiro was dead. Yes, he was killed by an assassin who was aiming at me. And you killed the assassin? I had him put to death, but he was already dying. He bit off his own tongue. Hiroshi's eyes gleamed. I wanted to explain something of my pain at Hajime's death and Jiro's, my revulsion at the endless cycle of bloodshed and revenge, but I did not think this warrior's son would be capable of understanding it, even after the Kikuta sleep, and I wanted to ask something else of him. Do many people believe I'm a sorcerer? Some whisper about it, he admitted, mostly women and idiots. I'm afraid of disloyalty in the castle. That's why I want to leave you here. If you think there is any danger that Mariama will side with Arai when I am gone, send word to me." Hiroshi stared at me. "No one here would be disloyal to Lord Otori." I wish I could be as certain. "I'll ride and find you myself," he promised. "Just make sure you take a quiet horse," I told him. I sent him back to his uncle's house and ordered food to be brought. Makoto returned with a report on the preparations. Everything was ready for our early departure. However, after the meal, he tried again to dissuade me. "It's utter madness," he said. "I won't say another word after tonight, and I'll go with you, but to attack a nobleman whose betrothed you stole." "We were legally married," I said. "He is the one who has committed an act of madness." "Didn't I warn you at Terayama how such a marriage would be viewed by the world? It was your own rashness that has led to this, and it will lead to your downfall if you persist in it." "Can you be sure you weren't motivated by jealousy then, as you are now? You've always resented my love for Keide." "Only because it will destroy you both," he replied quietly. "Your passion blinds you to everything. You were in the wrong. It would be better to submit to that and try to make your peace with Arai. Don't forget he is probably holding the Miyoshi brothers as hostages. Attacking Lord Fujiwara will only enrage him further." "Don't give me such advice," I said in a fury. "Submit to having my wife taken from me? The whole world will despise me. I would rather die." "We probably all will," he replied. "I am sorry I have to say these things to you, Takeo, but it is my duty to. However, I have told you many times that your cause is mine, and I will follow you no matter what you choose to do." I was too angry to continue talking to him. I told him I wanted to be alone and called to Manami. She came in, her eyes red with weeping, and took away the food trays and spread out the bed. I took a bath, thinking it might be the last for some time. I did not want to stop being angry, for when my rage abated, grief and something worse, apprehension, took its place. I wanted to stay in the intense, dark mood of my Kikuta side that made me fearless. One of Matsuda's teachings came to mind. If one fights desperately, he will survive. If one tries to survive, he will die. The time had come to fight desperately, for if I lost Keide, I lost everything. Manami was even more distressed in the morning, sobbing uncontrollably as she said goodbye, and setting off the other maids too. But the mood among the men and in the streets was cheerful, with many townspeople flocking out to shout and wave at us as we rode past. I took only warriors, mainly the Otori, and the others who had been with me since Terayama, leaving the farmers to finish bringing in the harvest and to protect their own houses and the town. Most of the Maruyama men stayed to defend the castle, but a few came with us to act as guides and scouts. I had about 500 warriors on horseback, and perhaps another 500 bowmen, some mounted and some on foot. The rest were foot soldiers, armed with poles and spears. There was a train of pack horses, as well as porters, carrying provisions. I was proud of how quickly my army had been mustered and equipped. It's pretty impressive, by the way. We had not gone far, and were about to ford the Asagawa, where we had inflicted such a huge defeat on Aida Nariaki, when I became aware that Joanne and a handful of outcasts were following us. After the river, we took the south road towards Shirakawa. I had never travelled on that road before, but I knew it would take us 2 days at least to reach Keide's home, and Makoto had told me Fujiwara's residence lay a short distance farther to the south. When we stopped for the midday meal, I went to speak to Joanne, aware as I did so of the glances the men sent in my direction. I set my ears to catch any comments, determined I would punish anyone who muttered anything, but no one dared. Joanne prostrated himself at my feet, and I told him to sit up. "Why have you come?" He gave a smile that was more like a grimace, showing his broken teeth. "To bury the dead." It was a chilling reply, and one I did not want to hear. "The weather is changing," Joanne went on, gazing at a mass of high cloud spreading like horses' tails across the sky from the west. "A typhoon is coming." "Don't you have any good news for me?" "God always has good news for you," he replied. "I am to remind you of that afterwards." "Afterwards?" "After the battle you lose." "Maybe I won't lose it." Indeed, I could not imagine it, with my men so fresh and eager, and my own rage burning so powerfully within me. Joanne said no more, but his lips moved silently, and I knew he was praying. Makoto also seemed to be praying as we rode on, or was in that state of meditation that monks achieve. He looked serene and withdrawn, as if he had already cut his ties with this world. I hardly spoke to him, as I was still angry with him, but we rode side by side, as we had so often done before. Whatever his doubts about this campaign, I knew he would not leave me, and little by little, soothed by the rhythm of the horses' feet, my rage against him abated. The sky gradually clouded over with a darker tinge on the horizon. It was unnaturally still. We made camp that night outside a small town. In the early hours of the morning it began to rain. By midday it was a downpour, slowing our progress and dampening our spirits. Still, I kept telling myself there was no wind. We could cope with a little rain. Makoto was less optimistic, fearing we would be held up at the Shirakawa, which was prone to sudden flooding in this weather. But we never got to the Shirakawa. As we neared the limits of the Maruyama domain, I sent scouts ahead. They returned in the late afternoon to say they had spotted a medium-sized force, perhaps 12 or 1500 strong, setting up camp on the plain ahead. The banners were Seishu, but they had also seen Lord Fujiwara's crest. "He has come out to meet us," I said to Makoto. He knew what my reaction would be. "He almost certainly is not here in person," Makoto replied, "but he would be able to command any number of allies. As I feared, they have set a trap for you. Your reaction would not be hard to guess. We will attack them at dawn." I was relieved the army was so small. I was not at all intimidated by Fujiwara. What I feared was a confrontation with Arai and some of the 30,000 men he had under arms. The last I'd heard of Arai was that he was in Inuyama, far away in the east of the three countries. But I'd had no news of his activities all summer. He could be back in Kumamoto for all I knew. For all I knew, less than a day's journey from Shirakawa. I questioned the scouts closely about the terrain. One of them, Sakai, knew the area well, having grown up there. He considered it to be a fair battleground, or would be in better weather. It was a small plain, flanked to the south and east by mountain ranges, but open on the other sides. There was a pass to the south through which our enemies had presumably come, and a broad valley led away to the north, eventually to the coast road. The road we travelled on from Maruyama joined this valley a couple of miles before the first rocky outcrops of the plain. There was little water in these uplands, which was why they were uncultivated. Horses grazed on their wild grasses, and were gathered together once a year in the autumn. In early spring the grass was burned off. Sakai told me that Lady Maruyama used to come hawking here when she was younger, and we saw several eagles hunting for food before the sun set. The valley at our rear reassured me. If we should need it, it was a way of retreat. I did not plan to retreat, and I did not want to have to fall back to the castle town. My aim was only to go forward, to crush whoever stood in my way, regain my wife, and wipe out the terrible insult of her abduction. However, I had been taught by Matsuda never to advance without knowing how I would retreat, and for all my rage, I was not going to sacrifice my men unnecessarily. No night ever seemed so long. The rain lessened a little, and by dawn it was no more than a drizzle, raising my spirits. We rose in the dark and began to march as soon as it was light, unfurling the Otori banners, but not yet sounding the conches. Just before the end of the valley, I ordered a halt. Taking Sakai with me, I went on foot, under cover of the trees, to the edge of the plain. It stretched away to the southeast in a series of small rounded hillocks, covered in long grass and wildflowers, broken by outcrops of strangely shaped grey-white rocks, many of them splashed with yellow and orange lichen. The rain had made the ground beneath our feet muddy and slippery, and mist hung in swathes above the plain. It was hard to see more than a couple of 100 paces, yet I could hear our enemy clearly. The neighing of horses, the shouts of men, the creaking and jingling of harnesses. "How far did you go last night?" I whispered to Sakai. "Just over the first ridge, not much farther than this. Their scouts were also about." "They must know we're here. Why haven't they attacked already?" I would have expected them to ambush us at the head of the valley. The sounds I heard were those of an army in readiness, but not on the move. "Perhaps they don't want to give up the advantage of the slope," he suggested. It was true that the slope was in their favour, but it was not particularly steep and gave no huge advantage. The mist bothered me more, as it was impossible to see exactly how many men we faced. I crouched in silence for a few moments, listening. Beyond the drip of the rain and the sighing of the trees, I could hear both armies equally. Or could I? From the enemy, the noise seemed to grow in volume like the surge of the sea. You saw 1,500 at most. Hello, fangirl. How are you doing, friendo? Welcome in, everyone. I hope you had a nice stream. What did you get up to? Here for the asthma? I'm still reading Brilliance of the Moon. Takeo, the young lord, is extremely pissed off that Lord Fujiwara has stolen his wife. And so he's basically got his army and is marching to get her back. But turns out Fujiwara has his own army, and now he's sussing things out on the morning of the battle. So yeah. Andrew Radio, thank you. Thank you for gifting Fascinating Fangirl. You're playing Helldivers? Adventurous. So sleepy. Okay. I'll go back a little bit. Just a little bit. Shark emotes? Yeah. Shark. I miss Sharky Misty. I haven't seen Sharky Misty in a while. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I've been doing. Reading. Probably go for another half hour. Or as long as this book goes. Half hour, yeah. Okay. You saw 1,500 at most? Closer to 1,200, Sakai replied. I'd bet on it. I shook my head. Maybe the weather, sleeplessness, apprehension were causing me unnecessary alarm. Maybe my hearing was playing tricks on me. However, when we returned to the main force, I called Makoto and the captains and told them I feared we might be hopelessly outnumbered, in which case we would immediately retreat on the signal from the conch shell. Do we pull back to Maruyama? Makoto asked. This had been one of my plans, but I needed an alternative. It was what my enemies would expect me to do, and for all I knew, they might have already attacked the castle town, in which case I would find myself truly trapped. I took Makoto aside and said, If Arai has come out against us too, we cannot stand and fight. Our only hope is to retreat to the coast and get the Tirada to transport us to Oshima. If we start to retreat, I want you to ride ahead and find Ryoma. He must arrange it with Tirada Fumio. They'll say I was the first to flee, he protested. I would prefer to stay by your side. There is no one else I can send. You know Ryoma, and you know the way. Anyway, we will probably all be in flight. He looked at me curiously then. Do you have a premonition about this encounter? Is this the battle we lose? Just in case it is, I want to preserve my men, I replied. I've lost so much, I can't afford to lose them too. After all, there are still 2 to win. Pixie. Streams are first. I open when I start work, which is why you see my avatar lurking before I can message. When I get settled and coffee, I'm assuming that's coffee, then I get to start listening. Oh, Pixie. That's so nice. I still got that picture you sent me in Discord of you with the coffee. And the pride mug. But thank you for the compliment. That's very nice and very welcome. I've lost so much. I can't afford to lose them too. After all, There are still 2 to win." He smiled. We clasped hands briefly. I rode back to the head of the troops and gave the signal to advance. The mounted bowmen rode forward, followed by the foot soldiers, with warriors on horseback on either flank. As we came out from the valley, at my signal, the bowmen split into 2 groups and moved to either side. I ordered the foot soldiers to halt before they came into range of the opposing archers. Their forces loomed out of the mist. I sent one of the Autori warriors forward. He bellowed in a huge voice, "Lord Autori Takeo is moving through this country. Allow him to pass, or be prepared to die." One of their men shouted back, "We are commanded by Lord Fujiwara to punish the so-called Autori. We'll have his head and yours before noon." We must have seemed a pitiful force to them. Their foot soldiers, overconfident, began to stream down the slope with their spears held ready. At once our bowmen let fly, and the enemy ran into a hail of arrows. Their bowmen retaliated, but we were still beyond their range, and our horsemen swept up through the foot soldiers and against the archers before they could set arrow to cord again. Then our foot soldiers surged forward and drove them back up the slope. I knew my men were well trained, but their ferocity surprised even me. They seemed unstoppable as they rushed forward. The enemy began to pull back, faster than I'd expected, and we raced after them, swords drawn, slashing and cutting at the retreating men. Makoto was on my right side, the conch shell blower on my left as we crested the hill. The plane continued its undulating roll towards the distant range in the east. But instead of a small army in retreat, we were faced with a more daunting sight. In the dip between the small hills was another army, a huge one, Arai's Western Army, its banners flying, its men prepared. "Blow the conch," I shouted to the man alongside me. I should have believed my own ears all along. He placed the shell to his lips, and the mournful sound rang across the plain, echoing back from the hills. "Go," I yelled to Makoto, and he turned his horse with difficulty and urged it to a gallop. It fought the bit, not wanting to leave its fellows, and Shun whinnied to it. But in a few moments we had all turned and were racing after Makoto back to the valley. I had been proud of my men's attack, but I was even prouder of them at the moment in the misty autumn dawn when they obeyed the orders instantly and began to retreat. The swiftness of our turn took our enemy by surprise. They had counted on us tearing down the slope after them, where they and Arai's men would cut us to pieces. In the first encounter, we had inflicted greater casualties, and for a while their advance was hampered by the fallen dead and by the confusion surrounding both armies. About this time, the rain began to fall more heavily again, turning the ground underfoot to slippery mud, which favoured us as we were nearly into the valley with its rockier floor. I was in the rear, urging the men forward, and from time to time, turning to fight off our closest pursuers. Where the valley narrowed, I left 200 of my best warriors, with orders to hold out as long as they could, buying time for the main force to get away. We rode all that day, and by the time night fell, we had outstripped our pursuers, but with casualties and the rearguard we had left behind, we were barely half the number we had been. I let the men rest for a couple of hours, but the weather was worsening, and, as I'd feared, the wind was picking up. So, we continued through the night and the next day, hardly eating, hardly resting, occasionally fighting off small bands of horsemen who caught up with us, pushing desperately on towards the coast. That night we were in striking distance of Mariyama, and I sent Sakai on ahead to see what the situation was in the town. Because of the worsening weather, he was of the opinion that we should retreat there, but I was still reluctant to commit myself to a long siege, and still uncertain as to who the town would side with. We halted for a while, ate a little, and rested the horses. I was beyond exhaustion, and my memories of that time are cloudy. I knew I was facing total defeat, had already been defeated. Part of me regretted not dying in the battle in my desperate attempt to rescue Kaede. Part of me clung to the prophecy, believing it would still be fulfilled, and part of me simply wondered what I was doing, sitting like a ghost in the temple where we had taken shelter, my eyelids aching and my whole body craving sleep. Gusts of wind howled around the pillars, and every now and then the roof shook and lifted, as if about to fly away. No one spoke much. An air of resigned defiance hung over everyone. We had not quite crossed over to the land of the dead, but we were on our way there. The men slept, apart from the guards, but I did not. I would not sleep until I had brought them to safety. I knew we should be moving on soon, should march against... I knew we should be moving on soon, should march again most of the night, but I was reluctant to rouse them before they were rested. I kept saying to myself, just a few more minutes, just until Sakai returns. And then finally I heard the sound of hooves through the wind and the downpour. Not one horse, I thought, but two. I went to the veranda to peer out into the dark and the rain, and saw Sakai, and behind him Hiroshi, sliding from the back of an old bony horse. Sakai called, "I met him on the road, just outside the town. He was riding out to find you, in this weather." They were cousins of some sort, and I could hear the note of pride in his voice. "Hiroshi," I said, and he ran to the veranda, undoing his sopping sandals and dropping to his knees. "Lord Otori." I pulled him inside out of the rain, gazing at him in astonishment. "My uncle is dead, and the town has surrendered to Arise men," he said in fury. "I can't believe it. Almost as soon as you'd left, the elders decided. My uncle took his own life rather than agree. Arise men arrived early this morning, and the elders caved in at once." Good job he didn't go back. Even though I'd half expected this news, the blow was still bitter, made worse by the death of Sugita, who had supported Kaede so loyally. Yet I was relieved I had followed my instincts and still had my retreat route to the coast. But now we had to move at once. I called to the guards to rouse the men. "Did you ride all this way to tell me?" I said to Hiroshi. "Even if the Mariyama desert you, I will not," he said. "I promised you I'd come. I even chose the oldest horse in the stable." You would have done better to stay at home. My future is looking dark now. Sakai said in a low voice, I am ashamed too. I thought they would stand by you. I can't blame them, I said. Arai is vastly more powerful, and we have always known Mariama cannot sustain a long siege. Better to surrender right away, spare the people, and save the harvest. They expect you to retreat to the town, Hiroshi said. Most of Arai's men are waiting for you at the Asagawa. Then maybe there will be fewer in pursuit of us, I said. They won't expect me to move towards the coast. If we ride day and night, we can get there in a couple of days. I turned to Sakai. There's no point in a child like Hiroshi disobeying his own clan and throwing his life away on a lost cause. Take him back to Mariama. I release him and you from any obligation to me. They both refused adamantly to leave me, and there was no time to argue. The men were awake and ready. It was still raining heavily, but the wind had dropped a little, renewing my hope that the worst of the storm was over. It was too dark to go at more than an ox's pace. The men in front carried torches that showed the road, but often the rain dimmed them to smoke. We followed blindly. There are many tales of the Otori, many ballads and chronicles about their exploits, but none has captured the imagination more than this desperate and doomed flight across the country. We were all young, with the energy and madness of young men. We moved faster than anybody could have believed, but it was not fast enough. I rode always at the rear, urging my men forward, not letting anyone fall behind. The first day we fought off 2 attacks from our rear, gaining precious time for our main force to go forward. Then the pursuit seemed to die away. I imagine no one thought we would keep going, for it was clear by now that we were riding into the whirling heart of the storm. The storm was covering our flight, but I knew that if it grew any worse, all hope of escaping by boat was gone. On the second night, Shun was so tired he could hardly lift one foot after the other. As he plodded along, I dozed on his back, sometimes dreaming that the dead rode alongside me. I heard Amano call to Jiro, and heard the boy reply, laughing cheerfully. Then it seemed to me that Shigeru rode next to me, and I was on Raku. We were going to the castle in Hagi, as we had on the day of my adoption. I saw Shigeru's enemy, the one-armed man, Ando, in the crowd, and heard the treacherous voices of the Otori lords. I turned my head to cry out to Shigeru, to warn him, and saw him as I had last seen him alive on the riverbank at Inuyama. His eyes were dark with pain, and blood ran from his mouth. "Do you have Jato?" he said, as he had said then. I snapped awake. I was so wet, I felt I had become a river spirit that breathed water instead of air. In front of me, my army moved like ghosts, but I could hear the crash of the surf, and when dawn came, it showed us the wind-swept coast. All of the offshore islands were obliterated by heavy sheets of rain, and with every moment the wind grew stronger. It was howling like a tormented demon when we came to the cliffs where Hajime had lain in wait for me. 2 pines had been uprooted and lay across the road. We had to lift them out of the way before we could get the horses through. I went to the front then and led the way to the shrine of Kate Jinja. One of the buildings had lost its roof, and thatch was blowing around the garden. But Makoto's horse was tethered in what remained of the building, back turned to the wind, head bowed, alongside another stallion I did not recognize. Makoto himself was inside the main hall with Ryoma. I knew it was hopeless before they said anything. In fact, I was amazed that Makoto had made it here at all. That he had found Ryoma seemed like a miracle. I embraced them both, enormously grateful for their loyalty. I discovered later that Ryoma had been told by Fumio to come and wait for me, with the message that they would meet me as soon as the weather cleared. We had not failed through any lack of foresight, courage, or endurance. We had been defeated in the end by the weather, by the great forces of nature, by fate itself. "Joanne is also here," Makoto said. He took one of the loose horses and followed me. I had hardly thought of Joanne during our flight to the coast, but I was not surprised to find him here. It was as if I had expected him to appear again in the almost supernatural way he turned up in my life. But at that moment, I did not want to talk to him. I was too tired to think of anything beyond gathering the men inside the shrine buildings, protecting the horses as much as possible, and salvaging what remained of our soaked provisions. After that, there was nothing any of us could do but wait for the typhoon to blow itself out. It took 2 days. I woke on the night of the second day and realized I'd been dragged out of sleep by silence. The wind had dropped, and though the eaves still dripped, it was no longer raining. All around me, men slept like the dead. I got up and went outside. The stars were as bright as lamps, and the air clean and cold. I went to look at the horses. The guards greeted me in low voices. "Weather's cleared up," one said cheerfully, but I knew it was too late for us. I walked on into the old graveyard. Joanne appeared like a ghost in the ruined garden. He peered up into my face. "Are you all right, Lord?" "I have to decide now whether to act like a warrior or not," I said. "You should be thanking God," he replied. "Now that the lost battle is done with, the rest are for you to win." I had said the same to Makoto, but that was before the wind and rain had dealt with me. "A true warrior would slit his belly now," I said, thinking aloud. "Your life is not your own to take. God still has his plan for you. If I don't kill myself, I'll have to surrender to Arai. He is on my heels, and there is no way that Harada can reach us before he does." The night air was beautiful. I heard the muffled whisper of an owl's wings, and a frog croaked from the old pond. The crash of the waves on the shingle was abating. "What will you do, Joanne? Will you return to Maruyama?" I hoped uneasily that the outcasts would be well treated when I was no longer there to protect them. With the country in turmoil, they would be more vulnerable than ever, turned on as scapegoats, denounced by villagers, persecuted by warriors. He said, "I feel very close to God. I think he will call me to him soon." I did not know how to reply to this. Joanne said, "You released my brother from his suffering at Yamagata. If it comes to it, will you do the same for me?" Don't say such things, I replied. You have saved my life. How can you ask me to take yours? Will you? I am not afraid of dying, but I am afraid of the pain. Go back to Mariama, I urged him. Take the horse you came on. Stay away from the highways. I will send for you if I can, but you know Arai is likely to take my life. We will probably never meet again. He gave his characteristic slight smile. Thank you for all you've done for me, I said. Everything that has happened between us is part of God's plan. You should thank him. I went with him to the horse lines and spoke to the guards. They watched in disbelief as I loosened the stallion's rope, and Joanne leapt onto its back. After he had trotted off into the darkness, I lay down again but did not sleep. I thought about Kader and how much I loved her. I thought about my extraordinary life. I was glad I had lived it the way I had, despite all my mistakes. I had no regrets except for those who had died before me. Dawn came as bright and perfect as any I'd ever seen. I washed as best I could and dressed my hair, and when my ragged army awoke, I ordered them to do the same. I called for Ryoma, thanked him for his service, and asked if he would wait at least until he heard of my death, and take the news to Fumio at Oshima. Then I gathered the men together and spoke to them. I am going to surrender to Lord Arai. In return, I trust he will spare your lives and accept your service. I thank you for your loyalty. No one has been better served than I. I told them to wait in the shrine under the command of their captains, and asked Makoto, Sakai, and Hiroshi to come with me. Makoto carried the Otori banner, and Sakai the Maruyama. Both were torn and streaked with mud. The horses were stiff and slow, but as we rode, the sun came up and warmed them a little. A string of wild ducks flew overhead, and a stag barked in the forest. Across the water we could see the clouds above Oshima. Apart from them, the sky was clear, deep blue. We passed the fallen pines. The storm had gouged out the road around them and undermined the cliff where Hajime had stood. Boulders had tumbled down in a small landslide, and as the horses picked their way around them, I thought of the young wrestler. If his arrow had found its mark, Jiro would still be alive, and so would many others. I thought of Hajime's body, lying unburied not far from there. He would soon have his revenge. We had not gone far when I heard ahead the rapid tramping of horses. The horsemen came at a trot, a group of about 100, 2 bannermen carrying Arai's crest at their head. When they saw us in the road, they stopped abruptly. Their leader rode forward. He was wearing full armour and an elaborate helmet decorated with a crescent moon. I was thankful for the warmth of the sun, for I was no longer cold and could speak firmly. I am Otori Takeo. This is Sugita Hiroshi, nephew of Lord Sugita of Maruyama. I ask you to spare his life and return him safely to his clan. Sakai Masaki is his cousin and will accompany him. Hiroshi said nothing. I was proud of him. The leader inclined his head slightly, which I took to mean agreement. I am Akita Tsutomu, he said. My orders are to bring Lord Otori to Lord Arai. He wishes to speak with you. I am prepared to surrender to Lord Arai, I said, on condition that he spare the lives of my men and take them into his service. They may accompany you if they come peacefully. Send some of your men with Kubo Makoto, I said. He will tell them to surrender without a fight. Where is his lordship? Not far from here, we set out the typhoon in Shuho. Makoto left with most of the warriors, and Sakai, Hiroshi, and I rode on in silence with Akita. End of chapter 7. Damn, that was an abrupt ending to that chapter. And it definitely didn't end on a high. Okay, so Takeo just surrendered. Next chapter, chapter 8, returns to the point of view of Shizuka, who is currently with the tribe in one of their secret villages. It's quite large. Quite a large chapter. Oh no, it's not that big. Okay. And after that we go back to Takeo. Okay, interesting. So, let me have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 streams left of this book. 4 or 5, something like that. But my voice is well and truly done for tonight. I'm hoping I'm not coming down with another cold. That would suck. Right. That tea is bone cold. Okay. Oh my goodness. So, that was a nice stream. And we got a friend visited us, fascinating fangirl visited us. Hooray. Let's have a little look, see who is on. We have, starting from the bottom, Chico's on, Emmy Cherry's on, that's Rerun, Alyssa's on, oh she come back from TwitchCon, Chronico's playing Elden Ring. I like Chronico's VTuber avatar. She's got her avatar's holding a pet shark. It's funny. We've got Loaf, who is doing ASMR. Pixel Smixel is singing, by the looks of it. Electrocute. Who else we got? Interesting. No. It's National Kitten Day. Apparently, it is National Kitten Day, July 10th. Or 10th of July, as it correctly is said. We might raid Chronico, maybe. maybe. I'm not a fan of looking for people to raid. That's why I feel like my stream's like at the end of the line. Like everyone's ending their stream, and like some people end up raiding me, and like I can't find anyone to raid. Who's doing? Not that there are tons of people who are streaming. I just meant like I can't find anyone who my audience would like me to raid, like who has similar sort of vibes, I guess. Because Raid Finder doesn't work really for ASMR. Oh, that's cool. They've got a lot of may contain sexual themes things now. Well, that's a bonus. Zach TV is stream, but his stream is definitely more chaotic. Yeah, so like I could raid, Zach or Emmy Cherry or whoever. I was looking for somebody chill, preferably who's reading. Oh, that's what I'll do. Reading. Me, I'm the only one with a reading tag. Okay, what about reading aloud? Me again. Okay, cool. Yep. Okay. Spanish. Might just end stream. I'm not going to dump everyone in the loud channel. Done that before. Not good. Well, now, who was I going to shout out? I think I might give another shout out to someone I was watching the Savo. I had on in the background the Savo. I can't remember a damn his name. Rather, how's it spelt? Okay, there we go. Okay. I can never remember how to spell Falcor's name. Right, random shout out is Falcor the Book Dragon.
Glory to you and your house.
Glory to you, Falcor. Falcor does ASMR and reads. Yay. I can't remember the book she's reading at the moment, but I'm jealous of the I like book emote that she has. That one. I'm envious. I was thinking about one that says might give book or something like that, but I don't want a copy. I'm just going to read Chronico. And if that's not your vibe, that's fine. I just want you all to look at Chronico's shark plushie VTuber that she's carrying. That's basically why I'm rating. That's pretty much the only reason I'm rating Chronico. Alright. Let's rate Chronico. Thank you for watching, friendos. Please join the raid. And I will see you next week for the continuation of the book. I've got another couple of weeks to go, maybe 3 on the book. And then we can think about maybe doing the sequels to the series. There are a couple of extra books that were written about the series that maybe I could read if everyone's still interested. So yeah, I stream every Tuesday and Wednesday at 9 PM Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is like 6 AM Canadian or something like that. Or 7 AM Canadian. Something ridiculous. So yeah, I'll see you next week. Okay, everyone. Thank you for being here. Bye, everyone. Bye.